Gruler. He's going to discuss crisis management planning. And Steve is the president and CEO of Global Quality Consulting Incorporated. So, Steve, it's great to speak with you today. Can you first provide a brief background of yourself?
Yeah, I can. I can do that. Dustin, I'll be more than happy to do that. Thanks for the opportunity to chat with you this morning. I don't know how brief I can be. I've had a pretty long career. I've got 35 plus years in consumer products companies within manufacturing, senior management, and across the board with multiple different companies. But I came out of college with my degrees in analytical chemistry, went to work with Quaker Oats as a QA supervisor, quality assurance supervisor, and ended up as the QA manager of their largest facility. I learned a lot in operations of being on the shop floor and managing quality and risk and things, and even some crises, some minor recalls and things of that nature for Quaker Oats. From there, I went to Clorox Company out in California, where I was with them for about 9-10 years. And out of the majority of that time, I was the global head of quality for their organization. So I went to the corporate side. I actually did a lot of work within the C-suite of that, being part of the executive team. And at that time, Clorox was like a $5.2 billion company, international company, and they just a wide variety of products that they had as a consumer products company. I know we used to state that you could go in any aisle in a grocery store and you would find a Clorox product, and it'd either be number one in its category or number two or both. So it went everything from bleach to liquid plumber to auto armor tire care and cleaning materials to combat insecticides to Hidden Valley Ranch dressing to KC Masterpiece barbecue sauce, Glad bags, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. From there, I had a couple other stints with other companies. One company was a bottling company, made plastic bottles, blow molding, had 51 manufacturing facilities. I was the head of quality for them. I finished my career with Gerber, head of quality for those individuals, for not only the baby's food but the medical devices, the clothes, the baby care items, things of that nature, and gained a lot of experience around the globe, a lot in Asia with Gerber and in Europe. And then when I was with Clorox, I had a lot of experience with South America and other parts of the globe. From there, when I left Gerber into my career with industry, I started my own consulting business. I started a business in 2004, and we are a full-service crisis management, food safety, and regulatory compliance consulting company. Since 2004, I guess that's been about 12 years now. My goodness, time flies. About 8 of those years, we were the retained syndicate, and they would insure various companies of all sizes and all categories and sectors for product recall and contamination. We offered 2 primary services, which we do today, and I'll explain what's a little different today. But we offered 2 fundamental services. One was what the industry called pre-incident services, which we did a lot of reviews, assessments, planning, helping people build crisis management plans, do risk mitigation, crisis management simulations. It really helped them focus on how to identify, manage, and mitigate risk to their brand. That's primarily focused on product performance and or cultures, things that affect those across the board. And one thing that has changed over the years is social media capability, which has really increased the seriousness and the need for a solid crisis management plan. We still offer those services today, although we're not, for the last 2 years, we have not been with the Lloyd's of London Syndicate. We've separated from them and done some other stuff. So that's fundamentally the background about me and my company. In my company, I would want to state it's just not me, but I have taken a business plan of identifying people much with my same background and pedigree, but in different areas of expertise. So, for instance, we have a network of senior level consultants that have held positions of high positions of accountability and authority within either the public or the private sector that are available to our clients and to us, and they range everything from regulatory, microbiologists, toxicologists, crisis communications firms, both internal to the U.S. and global, and customer service representatives, call center expansion support during a crisis. So it's a multifunctional group that we have. It's kind of a unique business model that we have these folks willing to pick up the phone at a moment's notice or go see somebody.
From your experience, do most companies you talk to, are they well prepared to handle a crisis environment?
I think the direct answer is the majority of them are not. There's a lot of things that they don't have in place. As I mentioned, one of the things I think that has really kind of put people back on their heels or a little flat-footed in the area is the recognition and understanding how to handle a crisis in today's social media and multimedia aspect of it, how to be poised to actually be on your toes and being able to respond quickly and be prepared with multiple things. And, it's interesting as you look at crisis management planning, there's two key phases that you undertake when responding to the crisis. And one is immediate response. In other words, you've got to stop the bleeding and the fire. You got to get things under control. You got to manage that piece, take care of the situation, do whatever you have to do to kind of put that crisis in check and under control. And the other piece is recovery stage, where you need to get back into getting the business back to its norm and get back in as quickly as you possibly can. And fundamentally, those technically, crisis management deals with kind of the immediate response to crisis, but also ensures business continuity is evoked. Business continuity plans deal more with kind of the recovery phase in that piece. So when we look at it, we've created kind of the term that we try to get focused, because they're all integrated together. It's all part of the situation. We believe in kind of an integrated emergency management system. And it takes these two subjects that are separate, but we integrate them into have them be the heart of the assessment and of the risk and getting them back to normal operations.
And what are some of the top one or two things that need to be in place to be effective? What should companies be doing with their plans?
Well, one of the key things is there's a multitude of layers that you need to have in place, but work with a company regardless of the size, and this varies, but we work with them and saying there's typically 3 layers of team members that need to be identified and trained and equipped to respond, and it typically is the executive team. And we share with them what their role and responsibility is, and they're there to provide resources, make risk decisions, and crisis communication if you're going to do it through our websites, for social media, that they're involved in, et cetera, in that aspect of it. So you got those folks clear. They need to understand clear what the role is and make sure that quickly and when to crisis plan. The other level is kind of the issues management team, and they're middle role to senior executives, depending on the size of the company. And this is your representation. Get a little bit on the executive team and their roles and responsibility.
A little bit.
Okay. Well, let me start over. There's 3 different levels that typically are involved with it in a company. Depending on the size of the company, it could be 2 layers. Smaller companies typically may not have 3 layers because there's not a sharp line and responsibility between the executive team and the middle management team. But the executive team is one layer that we look at with companies and make sure that we've got the right members of the executive team on the crisis management team, and they understand what their roles and responsibilities are and what they're not. For example, they need their role is primarily to provide resources to make risk-based decisions on their brand and what they're going to do. They need to be the ones that initiate a crisis communication plan, and that plan would include such things as dark websites, social media monitoring, social media working on whether it's Facebook, Twitter, all of those that are involved. They need to have a plan that they execute. And by plan, they need to have a person who knows what they're doing. It's documented. If X happens, we will do Y, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they just go execute it. The second team is the issues management team, or kind of the middle management team, middle to upper level senior managers. And their role is that team should be cross-functional. So every major function of the company, whether it's legal, whether it's regulatory, whether it's quality, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's purchasing, whatever it may be, all of those need to be represented, and they need to be identified and on the team and trained, because their role, their role is fundamentally to, first of all, determine scope and severity of the issue, what's going on, make a recommendation to the senior manager. Obviously, they need to perform what we call the triages, immediately stop the bleeding, do what they know to do to keep it under control. But then they need to, again, determine how big and how severe it is, what threats to the brand, what threats are there to their consumers or customers, and then what they need to do and responsible to take those actions and actually manage those actions. The third layer is the business recovery team, or the team that's really kind of the boots on the ground in many of these facilities. They're the ones that take the physical actions. They're the ones that get the product under control, or they're the ones, if there's a fire or a flood, they're the ones that control that. They look out the safety and well-being of their employees. They communicate with the customers and the clients. So they execute, and the books on around that actually do the work that has been laid out and managed by them.
And do you have any final recommendations for companies that want to build a solid crisis management plan?
I do. I think my recommendation is, and this is based on my experience of being in companies for many, many years and trying as global head of quality. This is something that is usually one of the number one priorities for many quality organizations, especially in the largest, that they need to pull together a crisis management team. But I would highly, highly recommend that companies reach out to experts, people that do this daily, people that have long experience and have gone through many crises, people that have sit in the boardroom and have been accountable or helped companies identify as what's the best thing to do, what is our risk, what's the scope and severity, what should we do, what shouldn't we do, what resources do we need to do. Work with somebody that can help them put together a very pragmatic plan. And there's some elements of those plans. Again, I mentioned a few of them, but you need to have those things documented. You need to have clear roles of responsibility, and you need to practice them. We do what we call and we find it quite fascinating and very valuable to our clients, what we call crisis management simulations. And that's testing your plan. So if you've got this plan, it looks great, build them to show kind of they got compliance if they're certified to some of the certification models around the globe. You're kind of required somewhat of a crisis management. They can cover that. We say that's great. What you need to do is get one that's going to protect your brand and help you run your business, and therefore, if you do it right, it'll be in compliance with any other regulation or any certifications process. But they need to test those plans, pressure test them annually. And then it's not just what a lot of people do a mock recall. They'll just go find a product and say, oh, we found it within X number of minutes. But that's really what they don't need to do. They need to build a scenario that's facilitated by a group that said, hey, this is going on. What would you do? We got this call. Oh, the FDA's here. Oh, the Channel 7's out front. Who's going to talk to them? What are you going to say? So run them through the whole system that pressure tests all of those three layers I talked about. Those three layers of teams that you really know that if the real thing happens, that you're well equipped to quickly respond. And one little side note that side bit of information, and I've always found fascinating and really I share with the C-suites when we talk about the crisis, and it's true. But there was a study done in Oxford in London, probably 15, 20 years ago now, somewhere along that line, where they looked at the impact of a crisis on a company's value, in other words, stock price. And they looked at hundreds of different incidents, all the way to including things like plane crashes, severe food poisoning, recalls, Bhopal was in there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what they did is they took the price point of the stock price, and they monitored it over time. So they have it before the crisis, here's where it's at, and that's kind of the center line. All companies, immediately when the crisis hit, their stocks dropped, and they dropped anywhere between 15 to 30%, or 20%, something in that area. And then over time, what we saw was quite fascinating, was there's two lines, clear, distinct lines formed. One line came back up to the initial price point before the incident and kept growing like a normal, healthy business. The other line stayed below that 15 to 20% or whatever, and even maybe up and down below in that range, but it never recovered. These two individuals came to the conclusion that it wasn't the issue of the crisis that happened, but it was how the company responded. How did they respond? How prepared were they? And you can see that that's in evidence since then that kind of supports that. If you look at, Tylenol issue in the U.S. has been one that's been renowned as the best way to do it. It's taught in all the business schools. It's a case study. They did it right. They responded right, and they recovered well. And there's quite a few other examples around the globe. I mean, Maple Leaf Foods in Canada was one that they responded well. So when I talked to the C-suite, I said they need to consider that and how that would affect their brand and what kind of impact it would have. And hopefully that brings them to the position they can make decisions that they can put together a solid, proactive, pragmatic crisis management program. So.
And thanks, Steve, for sharing today.
Yep, my pleasure. Wish you the best, and I'll talk to you again soon.